6:30 Eastern, 3:30 Pacific. Chiefs head coach Andy Reid.
The fact that we're at home is a real positive, I think. It's a high level of football, and you got to handle it that way.
In the NFC Championship game, the Eagles host the Commanders. That's a 3 Eastern, noon Pacific kickoff. Washington offensive coordinator Cliff Kingsbury says quarterback Jaden Daniels has been using VR to practice.
He uses the virtual reality stuff constantly, and I think that really has helped him just hang in that pocket and nail those reads and go through it like he does. But that's for a young guy to stand in there and do what he does and get to those reads has been as good as I've ever seen her.
Bundle auto and home, renters or condo, and save with Progressive.
That's the SportsGrid Sports Flash. I'm Chuck Sanders.
Welcome to Staples.
I am so pumped. My business is going to kill it this year.
Awesome. How can I help?
First, a new computer.
With Staples Home and Office Hot Deals, you save big on tech.
And new posters.
Save on custom printing, too.
And,
a new chair?
A chair? Who has time to sit?
Maybe all your new clients?
Now you're talking.
With Staples Home and Office Hot Deals, you'll find huge savings on custom prints, storage, chairs, and tech. And now save up to $175 off your print order. Exclusions apply. Visit staples.com/print for details. Ends 2/1.
Drivers who switch and save with Progressive could save hundreds. With that kind of money, you could go big time and switch to the expensive shampoo with amino acids. Sure, you don't know what those are or why you need them, but it sounds very impressive. And if you switch and save hundreds, you can massage it into your scalp every day. Now, if only you can get people to lean toward your head to smell those aminos. Switch to Progressive and you could save big time. For shampoo, Progressive Casualty Insurance Company and affiliates, not available in all states. Potential savings will vary.
No way football is playing in the fall and winter.
Because the hits don't hurt as much when you're numb. Get the lowdown on all the sports action coming up right here.
It's smarter to be on SportsGrid.
This is the SportsGrid Radio Network. You're listening to Football Full Circle with Joe Lisi and Ben Stevens.
It is a conference championship football Friday. Live right here on Football Full Circle. That is FFC all across the SportsGrid Radio Network and Sirius XM Channel 159. He is the mastermind of the pigskin. That is Joe Lisi. I am Ben Stevens. 4 teams still in the hunt for a Lombardi Trophy with 2 conference championship games to break down for Sunday. Picks, previews, best bets coming your way for championship weekend around the NFL for 2 spots in New Orleans to face off in Super Bowl 59. And we will do all of that, Joe. But it's been a busy Thursday afternoon into an early Friday morning in the NFL coaching carousel. Some big news to bring you around 2 vacancies that are no longer open. 2 new head coaches in Jacksonville, a younger guy, and a new head coach in Las Vegas, one that has certainly been around the block a time or 2. Plenty to dive into here, Joe, over this next hour up until 1 p.m. Eastern.
Yeah, it really is. And then there's reports potentially that Schottenheimer will be mentioned and named the head coach a little bit later. And Big D, we'll see if that plays out. But, I mean, I think a great hire for both teams. I think you look at the Las Vegas Raiders, they went after Ben Johnson. They couldn't get it. They got the A.G. Wiley veteran and Pete Carroll that I think out of all the older 70-year-old coaches still has a little bounce in his step and can bring potentially a wild card appearance to the Las Vegas Raiders. And Liam Cohen, great offensive mind, originally turned it down for Jacksonville because of Balky and that situation. Now a second interview and third time's a charm. And I think it's a great fit for Jacksonville. They get a very good offensive coordinator that is now going to be the head coach to elevate that team potentially to a division title. So a lot to get into today.
But it was a wild 48 hours in Duval County and the greater Sunshine State to keep Liam Cohen in-house for Jacksonville and to make him the next head coach. We'll talk the Jags in just a moment. But Lisi Guy, within the last hour and a half or so, a big development in Sin City. It was reported early on this Friday that Pete Carroll was in deep conversations with the Las Vegas Raiders to become the next head coach. It was the first time that Pete himself had been mentioned in that Las Vegas coaching search. And then within a few minutes, conversations became a contract and a done deal. Pete Carroll is the new head coach of the Las Vegas Raiders. A 3-year deal reportedly with a 4th-year team option. Pete Carroll, Joe, who spent 14 seasons in Seattle. In 13 of 14 years, led the Seahawks to a winning record. A Super Bowl championship in that span back in 2013, in a near Super Bowl the following year in the 2014 NFL season as well. A guy that has known success in the National Football League and, of course, collegiately. After a year off in 2024, at the age of 73, he is now the new head coach in Las Vegas.
Yeah, and again, I think it's a pretty good hire. And you know, you look at Pete Carroll, after Russell Wilson left, everybody was bashing the Seattle Seahawks a couple of years ago. They had the lowest win total in the NFL at 5.5, and he takes a journeyman quarterback in Geno Smith and basically a raw team, and he elevates them to a 9-7 overall record, 9-8 overall record, and a wild card appearance against San Francisco. Brought them back to 9 wins a couple of years ago. They couldn't make the playoffs, and then they went on to Mike McDonald. But at the end of the day, I mean, I think he's a very good coach. You know, a Super Bowl winner. He understands what it takes. Hasn't been there in a long time. But at the end of the day, he still brings stability to an organization that is searching for that, right? And they thought they had that with John Gruden. That situation didn't play out, and you can make the similarity. But I still believe Pete Carroll is a very good game planner. He's a good evaluator of talent. I think he gets more with less, assuming they get a good quarterback and a free agent signing potentially in Las Vegas with the tutelage and mentorship of Tom Brady. I think they'll be just fine.
There's a lot to figure out in Las Vegas. Earlier this week, the Raiders hire a new GM in John Spytek, who had worked for many years with Tom Brady in Tampa, was the assistant GM of the Buccaneers the previous 2 seasons. So you get the general manager in the front office is starting to be set up. And then really out of nowhere, Pete Carroll emerges as that head coaching candidate and the front runner for the job. Sure enough, he is now hired and has signed the dotted line. Joe, I think you're right. I think they made a run at Ben Johnson, maybe at Joe Brady, maybe at Liam Cohen. Didn't go their way, so they turn to the veteran experience that is Pete Carroll. Now, Donnie and I were discussing this as the news was breaking on the early line. Donnie basically made a pitch for the Raiders' job, not because of the football staff or the operations within the organization, but as a fun time for Pete Carroll to come to Las Vegas and to try to provide a stable floor, if you will, for a franchise that has largely been a failure in the last 2 decades. We have said this before. The Raiders as an organization, since a Super Bowl run in 2002, appearing in that 2022 big game, in the 22 seasons since, the Raiders have made the postseason twice. They have had a winning record twice, those conveniently in the same year. That means 20 years of 500 football or worse without a playoff berth. That is bad. So Pete Carroll, in his experience, although maybe he's not an innovator or the most creative and sexy young hire, Pete Carroll should provide a foundation, Joe, of consistency. But with that being said, it's not like college football, where Pete Carroll runs the entirety of a program and sets the building blocks in place for whoever his successor can be, that he can handpick that culture to continue year over year, season over season, coach over coach. I get Pete Carroll might provide some consistency to the Raiders, but if he's only there for 2 to 3 years, what does that mean for the next guy in the future of the franchise beyond Pete? That I'm not so sure.
Yeah, but that might mean Tom Brady handpicking that situation, and it might even be Tom Brady. You don't even know how that situation plays out from the broadcast booth to potentially the sideline. I mean, you can't say no.
That happens.
I mean, when we see former players do it, right? But think about what they've done, and they've been a losing organization, right? Ever since the days of Al Davis, and after he passed, they could just never get over the hump. They had glimpses 3 years ago with Bisaccia. They had Joe Burrow and that team on the ropes, right? That was the Super Bowl team of the Cincinnati Bengals, and they were 9 yards away from potentially winning that game with Derek Carr. So just think about that. You know, you had Derek Carr, you had Jimmy Garoppolo, and then obviously Antonio Pierce the past couple of years, you know, one on an interim basis where He pulls out a couple of wins against, Kansas City and LA, and it looked like they were on the right path. And then they just, from a talent perspective, were up against it. But still, now you have Pete Carroll, whether you love him or hate him, he's an upgrade, right? He's better than Mike McCarthy. He's better, in my opinion, than some of the other coaches that you would have gotten. He's better, I believe, than Robert Salah. He's better potentially than, Liam Cohen at this point. There's no guarantee that Liam Cohen or Ben Johnson were going to go in, with that roster and all of a sudden compete for a division title. So who knows? You don't know. But what I can tell you is from a game planning perspective, I'd still rather have Pete Carroll than over a handful of coaches. And as long as Tom Brady's there to oversee and make sure that this situation doesn't get out of hand, I still think it's a win-win for everybody.
For sure. I just wonder, Pete Carroll, at this stage of his NFL journey, 73 years old, will be 74 in September, now in his fourth organization as a head coach. 14 years in Seattle, 3, of course, with New England, 1 year in 1994 with the New York Jets. Does he elevate this Raiders team? And there's a lot still to be figured out in Sin City that we'll discuss up next. What the outlook is now for the Raiders, with Pete Carroll as their new head coach. And, of course, the wild 48 hours in Duval County around Liam Cohen. Next.
4 out of 5 scientists agree it's smarter to be on SportsGrid. And we're pretty sure that one scientist is still a virgin.
He just gives that vibe.
This is the SportsGrid Radio Network.
Vornado is voluntarily recalling its VH2 whole room heaters because the product's power cord can potentially detach and lead to electric shock and fire hazards. With the SportsGrid News Flash, I'm Trey Westerberg. The recall, issued January 16th in cooperation with the U.S. Consumer Product Safety Commission, according to the company, applies to off-white Vornado VH2 whole room heaters with the word Vornado and the red V behind it printed on the front of the product. Consumers can visit Vornado's recall website to confirm whether their product is part of the recall. Mexico raised tents on the U.S. border Wednesday as it braced for President Donald Trump to fulfill his pledge to carry out mass deportations. Enrique Serrano, an official in Chihuahua State where Juarez is located, said the tents erected for Mexican deportees were just the initial phase of a potential larger operation and something authorities would scale up if the number of migrants gathering on the border continued to mount. I'm Trey Westerberg with the SportsGrid News Flash.
Progressive presents Renter's MVP's Most Valuable Possessions. Today's MVP, Tom Kelly's carbon fiber mountain bike. Because more than riding his carbon fiber mountain bike, Tom loves telling people about his carbon fiber mountain bike. Friends, family, even a local barista knows about his carbon fiber mountain bike. And that's why Tom's carbon fiber mountain bike, if you haven't heard about it, is today's MVP. Keep your most valuable possessions protected by bundling your renters and auto insurance with Progressive. Progressive Casualty Insurance Company affiliates and other insurers not available in all states.
That spice is 10 out of 10. Would recommend. Hi, my name is Khadijah, and a little thing I love about the Chick-fil-A Grilled Spicy Deluxe Sandwich is that spicy kick of the chicken. It's just the right amount of heat, and it gets me excited. And then, pro tip, add that cilantro lime sauce. It cools it down. If the sandwich is at 100, the cilantro lime takes it to 200. It makes me want to, tell all my friends and family.
Order a Chick-fil-A Grilled Spicy Deluxe Sandwich and a Diet Dr. Pepper on the Chick-fil-A app for a limited time. Real guests paid for their testimonial.
There's something you should know and always remember.
SportsGrid does not increase luck.
We're your unfair advantage for the latest sports gaming information. If you're looking for luck,
go find a horseshoe.
This is the SportsGrid Radio Network. You're listening to Football Full Circle with Joe Lisi and Ben Stevens.
Beyond SportsGrid. Football Full Circle. Lisi and Stevens breaking down the Championship Sunday on the grid. Doesn't get better than this. We left off talking about Pete Carroll, Las Vegas Raiders, the situation in Duval County with Liam Cohen and the Tampa Bay Bucks. I mean, Ben, what a crazy 48 hours. You're right back there. What up?
It's a story that I've heard now in 2 different commercial breaks on 2 days on 2 different shows. that has made it very difficult for me to do my job because it is too good. We'll tell that
True
story.
story, by the way. True story. I mean, definitely a true story. Mind blown. I was mind blown when I heard he's crazy. Look at this guy. Well,
So Donnie, just so we can let people know if they're listening or like, what are these guys doing? Yesterday on the early line, I mentioned how Donnie would be live on Pro Football Today for Conference Championship Sunday alongside his co-hosts, Kevin Walsh and Joe Lisi. And Donnie said, Joe Lisi, like in one name. And I asked him about it. And there's a story, Lisi guy, that I think now you must share so everybody can be inside on the joke of a story you have about your name that has really cracked me up.
So we're talking like mid-'90s, obviously on the trading floor of the commodities exchange, and, you fill out applications for a job, and I fill out the application, obviously at that time I went by Joe, now I go formally by Joseph in regards to that. So, I fill out the application, and the receptionist looks at the name and goes, Joe Lisi. I think I'm going to name my firstborn Joe Lisi. And I had to explain to her, my name is Joe, first name, last name, Lisi. Not one name. So that's the gist of the story. So we call me Joe Lisi on the grid. So there you go. Joe Lisi.
Did you not space out your names all that well? Was it handwritten, I would assume?
No, it was first name, last name, middle initial, like you would do for any other application. I don't know. I have no idea what she was looking at. But
yesterday, that story made me cry. It's making me cry once again.
Joe Lisi.
Oh.
So
Joe
Lisi.
Do you have any idea if she ended up naming her kid Joe Lisi?
Well, I still keep in contact with a lot of those people, so I have to go back and take a look and see. Yeah, go through the data bank. But great times, by the way. Great times. I mean, you want to talk about the laughs? Just go back to the trading floor in mid-'90s to, it's almost like the grid, the laughs that we have on the grid. So. Nothing better.
The beautiful mind of Joe Lisi, where it got its start. All right. Somehow we got to get this show back on track. We'll try to do our best here. Hopefully you enjoyed some humor on this Football Friday. But Lisi guy, talking about the Raiders, a lot for Las Vegas to figure out now with Pete Carroll and a new GM in place in John Spytek. The Raiders do not have a quarterback of the future per se in-house right now. They have the 6th overall pick for the 2025 NFL draft. What do you think the fair expectation, wins-wise, would be for Pete Carroll in his first year in Las Vegas?
I mean, I think 6.5, 7 is right there and fair. I don't think they're going to be, like the Tennessee Titans in regards, and I know the roster is bare, but you still got to believe that Pete Carroll, can elevate that team to at least 6 or 7 wins. Now, maybe they tack on a 5.5 because they do have to play the Chargers and Denver and Kansas City in 6 games within the division. And, but you can never say never. The Raiders have shown with worse rosters where they could potentially pull 1 or 2 wins out of that division. So again, with Pete Carroll, from a game planning perspective, we have to see the free agent moves. Do they get a quarterback potentially like Sam Darnold on a 1 or a 2 year window? I mean, to bridge the gap. I don't think it'll be Aiden O'Connell. So at that particular time, I mean, when you look at the roster as a whole, all right, Max Crosby, if he stays, and then Jacoby Myers and Brock Bowers. I mean, who else is there? Are we taking anybody else? I doubt it for the most part.
Right. It's not exactly star-studded by any means, but Lisi guy, when you look at what Pete Carroll did in Seattle, 14 years there, in his final 12, a winning record in 11 of those 12 years, double-digit wins 8 times in that span as well. This guy is a winner. He has won at the highest level in the National Football League and, of course, collegiately as well. It's why you hope for a stable foundation for Pete Carroll to build on. Again, a lot to iron out for Las Vegas roster-wise, talent-wise, player-wise, the remainder of this offseason. But when you look at the AFC West, in the coaches now in that division, the Chiefs still on top. They have won the AFC West for 9 consecutive seasons now. But you've got Andy Reid, you've got Jim Harbaugh, you have Sean Payton, and you have Pete Carroll. Of course, some bad blood between Harbaugh and Carroll that know each other very well, dating back to their days at USC and Stanford, and of course, both in the NFC West together in Seattle and San Francisco, now in the AFC West. But at least you got 4 outstanding coaches within just one division in the National Football League.
Yeah, I mean, again, you just talk about experience. You talk about Super Bowls. You talk about, just, again, players that they have coached and quarterbacks. Yeah. And it's just a great, just a great division from a coaching perspective. I mean, young players and even free agents, I believe, would want to go there. Now some would say as a coach, you don't want to go up there and have to go up against the likes of Andy Reid and Harbaugh and Sean Payton. But from a competitive aspect, it doesn't get better than that, right? If you could beat those teams, that's what it's all about. You solidify and cement yourself as one of the best names in the NFL. So again, it's twofold. I think young players would jump at an opportunity to be coached by Pete Carroll.
3 of those 4 guys have won a Lombardi Trophy. 2 of those 4 guys have won a college football national championship. Everybody has at least coached in one Super Bowl. So much talent in one division. Now to Liam Cohen, after we got sidetracked by a good story next.
There's smart.
And there's not smart.
Not smart is hope as a strategy. It's smarter to be on SportsGrid.
Keep it here.
And win. This is the SportsGrid Radio Network. The SportsGrid Radio Network presents This Date in Sports History.
1950, Jackie Robinson signs the highest contract in Dodgers history at $35,000. Then in 1962, Robinson becomes the first African-American elected to the Baseball Hall of Fame. But his life will forever be remembered as a trailblazer for black athletes in America. For SportsGrid Radio, I'm Mike DeMurgis.
The Technology Minute with George Capalbo.
South Korean scientists have developed swarms of tiny robots working together like ants to perform Herculean feats, picking up and carrying objects many times their size, climbing together and hurling themselves over obstacles while moving objects over 2,000 times their weight. Is this the dreaded nanobot singularity? Each microbot is actually just 600 micrometers tall and meant to clean human arteries and carry targeted drugs, saving lives. So ignore the hype. It's all a question of scale. Follow me at Capalbo on X and stay tuned to the Technology Minute for more cool stuff like this.
Moneyline.
You know what? If you listen to the fans, you end up sitting with the fans as like a front office guy or head coach. You've heard that throughout the years. A lot of times I think the fans know way more and don't overestimate what the actual options are. You wake up this morning as a Chicago Bears fan. I don't think anybody's going like, oh man, come on. We wanted McCarthy over Ben Johnson. This was the prize here.
Catch Moneyline with Donnie Rightside and Kevin Walsh. Weekdays, 11 a.m. Eastern, 8 Pacific on the SportsGrid Radio Network. Wherever you go,
there you are.
Download the SportsGrid mobile app and we'll be right there with you.
So now you can get the winning edge
anywhere. Even while the wife's talking to you.
If you've got an earbud.
This is the SportsGrid Radio Network. You're listening to Football Full Circle with Joe Lisi and Ben Stevens.
Live right here on Football Full Circle. It's a busy Friday in the National Football League, of course, as we are just 2 days out from Conference Championship Sunday, but also in the head coaching carousel. Joe, we entered this offseason with 7 vacancies all around the NFL. 5 have now been filled. Most recently this morning, the Las Vegas Raiders named Pete Carroll. Yes, Pete Carroll, their new head coach. Yesterday, a wild day in the state of Florida. On Wednesday, Liam Cohen, who was the front runner to be the Jacksonville Jaguars' new head coach, current OC of the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, removed himself from contention in that head coaching search in Jacksonville, taking his name out, and was seemingly set to return to Tampa to be Baker and the Bucs' offensive coordinator as the highest paid coordinator in the NFL. All right, unfortunate for the Jaguars. A lot of people had expressed skepticism working with Trent Baalke. And then later on Wednesday afternoon, as we discussed yesterday, Baalke fired in Jacksonville after 4 seasons with the Jags. What would Jacksonville do? Would they go back to the drawing board? Would they reach out to guys they had already interviewed when Baalke was indeed in-house? It turned out, Joe, they did reach out to Liam Cohen, who with Trent Baalke now out of the picture, was interested in the Jacksonville job. He took a secret trip to Jacksonville to meet with the Jaguars about the head coaching position early on Thursday. The Buccaneers were trying to get in touch with Liam Cohen, and we're like, hey, bud, we're ready for you at the facility. Come sign the dotted line. Let's make this thing official. Could not get in contact with Liam Cohen. He ends up being in Jacksonville. His representation, the Jags front office and ownership, they reach a deal. Liam Cohen, the next head coach of the Jacksonville Jaguars.
Yeah, I don't have, and I brought this up, and Carver and I talked about it last night. He thought I'd be furious about the situation, understanding how it played out, and I really wouldn't, even if you're the Tampa Bay Bucs and you're Todd Bowles and that organization. I could see Baker and the players being upset, but the organization, I mean, your offensive coordinator or any type of coordinator has the ability more times than not, unless they're at the end of their careers, to be a head coach in the NFL. And granted, he went through the process. It didn't work out. That's when Baalke was there. And so maybe he said, I'm only coming if Baalke's not there, right? So he goes back to Tampa Bay. They give him an equal type of pay or whatever he has, and then that situation changes. It's not like he went to another team as an OC or stabbed them in the back in that regard, right? So, look, it hurts for Tampa Bay. They have to find an OC. But at the end of the day, if you're a head coach and your coordinator gets a full gig in terms of, being the head guy and gets it according to what he wants in terms of his request that he asked the organization, you can't be upset about it. You just can't. And it's not like we're only talking about a couple of weeks at most.
So I don't think they would have been upset initially with Liam Cohen being the front runner and the favorite to land the job, going through the proper protocols, reaching out for interviews, so on and so forth. But it was when Liam Cohen took himself out of the running, and of course that was contingent on Trent Baalke remaining the general manager. Okay, Baalke's fired. The Jags reach back out. I think Liam Cohen could say, guys, obviously a material change. Now I am interested once again. But based on all of the reporting from various insiders who have all of their multitude of sources, it seems as though Liam Cohen ghosted the Buccaneers. Now, there's been some conversation. He was dealing with some family issues. That's why he wasn't responsive. We know he went to Jacksonville in secret to take the head coaching interview. So I think that is what rubs people the wrong way, Joe. Kind of the sneaky nature of Cohen eventually becoming the head coach of the Jags. The fact that he left Tampa to become a head coach, even in Jacksonville, in the same state, but obviously not in the same division or even conference, not that big of a deal. With how it played out yesterday afternoon into the early evening hours, I think that is what the Buccaneers kind of have a right to take exception with. And I think if you are the Bucs, you were incredibly excited about the consistency and the congruency of having Liam Cohen back for a second year with Baker Mayfield in what was a successful season once again, the Bucs winning the NFC South for a 4th straight year.
Yeah, and they did it with Canales as well. So, whoever they hire and upgrade potentially will get the most. And I think it's Baker and Mike Evans. As they go, so does that offense now with Bucky Irvins. Maybe he did do them rotten. Maybe he's got a little Bill Belichick in him, this Liam Cohen. We might have to take another look. He might be shady, but that might equate to wins.
So we'll look exactly at Liam Cohen's career path because he has been on the incredibly fast rise in the coaching circles, and then we'll preview the conference championship matchups next.
The Winning Edge. You've got
But not everybody has it, because not everybody listens to us.
But we're working on that.
This is the SportsGrid Radio Network.
Progressive presents the SportsGrid Sports Flash. I'm Chuck Sanders. LeBron James and Giannis Antetokounmpo are the top vote getters as far as NBA All-Stars. James extended his record to 21 straight All-Star selections when he was named a starter for this year's midseason showcase. He'll be joined in the Western Conference starting lineup by Nuggets center Nikola Jokic, Suns forward Kevin Durant, Oklahoma City guard Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, and Golden State guard Steph Curry. Antetokounmpo led all players in fan voting for a second straight season. The Atlanta Braves have signed Jurickson Profar to a 3-year, $42 million deal. The 31-year-old hit .280 with a career-high 24 home runs and 85 RBI with San Diego last season. He made his first All-Star team and won a Silver Slugger Award. Profar joins center fielder Michael Harris II and right fielder Ronald Acuna Jr. Bundle auto and home, renters or condo, and save with Progressive.
That's the SportsGrid Sports Flash. I'm Chuck Sanders.
Mornings can start feeling the same. Wake up, brush teeth, go to work. But with breakfast from Wendy's, it's like, wake up, brush teeth, Baconate with a breakfast Baconator. Roll with a sausage breakfast burrito. Buddy it up with a Honey Buddy. Or get seasoned with seasoned potatoes. And then go to work. Sorry. When you're ready for a fresh wake-up call, gotta be Wendy's.
At participating U.S. Wendy's during breakfast hours.
Oh, could this vintage store be any cuter?
Right? And the best part? They accept Discover.
Accept Discover? In a little place like this? I don't think so, Jennifer.
Oh, yeah, huh? Discover's accepted where I like to shop. Come on, baby, get with the times.
Right, so we shouldn't get the parachute pants?
These are making a comeback. I think.
Discover is accepted at 99% of places that take credit cards nationwide. Based on the February 2024 Nielsen report.
You're listening to SportsGrid.
Spreading the winning edge far and wide.
Terrestrial, internet, TV, satellite, and don't forget our mobile app.
Face it.
The winning edge is everywhere.
Somewhere there's a squirrel frustrated he can't get a phone.
This is the SportsGrid Radio Network. You're listening to Football Full Circle with Joe Lisi and Ben Stevens.
We continue to talk the coaching carousel, and soon, championship weekend in the NFL. A deep dive and a breakdown with some best bets for both of our conference championship games come Sunday. But one final point on Liam Cohen. Joe, in 2017, this guy was the offensive coordinator at FCS Maine. He then takes an assistant wide receiver job in L.A. under Sean McVay, works as an assistant in Los Angeles through 2020, then goes to Kentucky in college football, has some success in Lexington, goes back to L.A. in 2022, the OC for the Rams in a disappointing year following a Super Bowl championship, heads back to Kentucky in 2023 to be the OC once again of the Cats, and then of course, a season ago, his first and now only year in Tampa as the offensive coordinator for Baker and the Bucs. We are talking about a 39-year-old offensive coordinator, now first-time head coach in Jacksonville, that has been on a meteoric rise in the coaching landscape. And Joe, Trent Baalke made Jacksonville a non-desirable destination. But with Trent Baalke now out, Liam Cohen in, who of course will have some say in who that next lead front office exec is going to be. And with Trevor Lawrence in-house, the Jags should be pretty good entering next season, at least based on expectation.
Yeah, I keep telling you, I think the Jags have the foundation to be a really good football team. And again, I know from a defensive perspective, maybe they're a little bit light, but at the end of the day, their offense could go toe-to-toe with anybody. And again, you know, you look at Trevor Lawrence, love him or hate him, he's still experienced. There's a huge amount of upside potentially that you could challenge with Liam Cohen. You have two dynamic running backs in terms of ETN and Bigsby that potentially can mimic Rashad White and Bucky Irvin. You have, if you keep Evan Ingram around, a hybrid type of tight end. You have Brian Thomas, that you can make the argument was the best wide receiver in this draft class, and Christian Kirk coming back from injury. You still have other playmakers as there. Parker Washington came up and stepped up in the passing attack as well. So, I don't see how it's a bad job. And oh, by the way, you're going up against teams like Houston and Indianapolis, and granted, they have good talent as well with Jonathan Taylor and C.J. Stroud. But don't tell me they can't potentially win it or be battling for a division title each and every year for the next 2 or 3 seasons, Ben.
Yeah, and it's not like the AFC West that we discussed, that Pete Carroll now takes the reins of the Raiders. The AFC South should be at least winnable, or at bare minimum, you can make up some ground and challenge the Texans in year number 1. Will be exciting to see what Liam Cohen and Trevor Lawrence do together in Duval County. All right, Lacey Guy, 48 hours out from Conference Championship Sunday in the National Football League. 4 teams, 2 games, and 2 spots available for a Super Bowl 59 bid in New Orleans. We go in chronological order, a deep dive into these games. The numbers, the points, the props, everything that we expect to see come this weekend. 3 p.m. Eastern Time. The first of 2 on Sunday in Philadelphia. The NFC Championship game between familiar foes. NFC East divisional opponents, in fact. The Eagles and the Commanders. Philly, a 6.5-point home favorite. Total stands at 47 and a hook. You heard Lacey talk about it yesterday. He might not be allowed on the desk of PFT come Sunday because of who he wants to bet on this upcoming weekend. Lacey Guy, you believe the Commanders can keep this game close? Do you think Washington, as they have in the previous 2 rounds, in a historic postseason run, with a rookie quarterback in Jaden Daniels, can pull off yet another outright upset to win a conference crown?
Yeah, I do. Again, we saw the market fluctuate a little bit from 4.5s to now 5.5s. Maybe we creep into 6, 6.5 by game time. Again, I'm not taking away from Philadelphia. They are if not the hottest team in terms of the NFL, winning 13 of the last 14 games. But I did see Jalen Hurts struggle a little bit banged up. I don't know what you're going to get. Do I expect them to put up points? Absolutely. I don't think there's no doubt that they can move the football on Washington. It's going to come down to, I believe, which team has the football last. And we talk about Washington momentum. This is clearly a different team than when they beat the Eagles last time, about 5 or 6 weeks ago. They're running the football more consistently. Cliff Kingsbury has that team in a rhythm. Defensively, they're opportunistic. And again, you have Jaden Daniels that isn't feeling any pain. And why should he now? I mean, he might lose, Ben, but I'm going to take the hot quarterback that's, doesn't care who he plays, with the hot coach. It reminds me of the Tampa Bay Bucks when they had Brady, that heater that they went on from the middle part of the year to the end. I'm going to ride it out. Give me Washington with the points and outright.
Joe, there have been so many different instances this season where Jaden Daniels in his rookie campaign in the National Football League has made history, has set new records for rookie quarterbacks. He is just the 6th ever rookie quarterback in the history of the NFL to start a conference championship game. He is looking to become the first ever starting rookie quarterback to lead his team to a Super Bowl appearance. The previous 5 rookies who have started a conference championship game have come up short. And Lacey Guy, this is a divisional duel between 2 teams that hail from the NFC East, which means this is game number 3 between the Birds and the Commanders this season. In the first 2 matchups in the regular season, both teams held serve on their own home turf. Philadelphia on a short week Thursday, back in week 11, winning 26-18 despite trailing early in the opening half against Washington. A huge game, as you might expect, for Saquon Barkley, nearly 200 scrimmage yards and 2 lengthy rushing touchdowns. And then in week 16, after Jalen Hurts exited only 5 minutes into the opening quarter with a concussion, it was the Commanders overcoming 5 turnovers, led by Jaden Daniels, who threw 5 touchdown passes to rally to beat Philadelphia in Landover, 36-33, outright as about a 3.5, 4-point underdog. So, Lisa, you believe the Commanders can keep this game close. If Washington is to keep this game competitive and stay within striking distance, what does that mean for our total of 47.5?
Again, I mean, it wouldn't shock me if we go under, right? But you have a quarterback in Jaden Daniels and that offense that's pushing tempo. Think about the 2 games that they played. First time in the Link was more of a ball control, a methodical, conservative type of game plan to feel out Philadelphia, and that played right into the front seven and the Philly secondary. I think you want to throw caution to the wind, especially playing on the road. You want the ability to strike fast, put the pressure on Jalen Hurts. Is he 100%, right? And again, we won't know until this game plays out, Ben. So I think the total is live at 47.5. I'm not going to go under that. Again, you got the 50 in the snow, and even if Philly does win, I think we blow right through it. So again, I think we lean to the over, but I really like Washington. You know me, totals wise, my best bet on the game is the Washington Commanders. I'm going to take the points.
So I believe the Eagles, if they are going to win this game, Joe, keep the game under, which is almost in contradiction to the normal handicapping thought. Pretty big favorite for a conference championship game near a touchdown. You need as many available points out there to cover a larger spread. I think if the Eagles are in full control of this game, the defense is winning the day against Jaden Daniels, against Brian Robinson Jr. and Austin Eckler, against guys like Terry McLaurin and De'Ami Brown, who has come on in a big way for this Washington aerial attack. I do want it noted, as we look at the stats, 70% of the bets on the spread, on the FanDuel Sportsbook, on the Commanders. And this line opened at 4.5 early on Sunday evening and is now closer to a touchdown. A very public dog, and yet a favorite who is seeing the spread work its way. We'll talk more about the NFC Championship and, of course, the quarterback comparison before we head over to Arrowhead in the AFC title game. That's all next on FFC.
We're not saying every SportsGrid listener is a legend, but you might start thinking about who's going to play you in the movie.
Just saying.
This is the SportsGrid Radio Network.
Vornado is voluntarily recalling its VH2 whole room heaters because the product's power cord can potentially detach and lead to electric shock and fire hazards. With the SportsGrid News Flash, I'm Trey Westerberg. The recall, issued January 16th in cooperation with the U.S. Consumer Product Safety Commission, according to the company, applies to off-white Vornado VH2 whole room heaters with the word Vornado and the red V behind it printed on the front of the product. Consumers can visit Vornado's recall website to confirm whether their product is part of the recall. Mexico raised tents on the U.S. border Wednesday as it braced for President Donald Trump to fulfill his pledge to carry out mass deportations. Enrique Serrano, an official in Chihuahua State where Juarez is located, said the tents erected for Mexican deportees were just the initial phase of a potential larger operation and something authorities would scale up if the number of migrants gathering on the border continued to mount. I'm Trey Westerberg with the SportsGrid News Flash.
With Progressive's Name Your Price tool, you get coverage options based on how much you want to pay for car insurance. And then you decide how to spend the rest of your money, because you're in charge. And right now, you're going to pay for groceries. But you decide what groceries. Just keep in mind you're running out of dishwashing soap. But you decide if you're going to buy that soap. Just those dishes won't clean themselves, will they? Remember, with Progressive's Name Your Price tool, we'll help you find coverage at a fair price. And then, you're in charge. Progressive Casualty Insurance Company and Affiliates. Not available in all states. Price and coverage match limited by state law.
My doctor told me my cholesterol is borderline. So I took control with Garlic Healthy Cholesterol Formula. Garlic helps maintain healthy cholesterol safely and naturally. It's odor and taste-free, and Garlic is a world leader in garlic potency. I'm taking charge of my cholesterol with Garlic Healthy Cholesterol Formula, cholesterol's natural enemy.
These statements have not been evaluated by the FDA. This product is not intended to diagnose, treat, cure, or prevent any disease. The term natural references only the garlic in the product. Use as directed.
Ask any player and they'll tell you any advantage is important.
That's where we come in.
SportsGrid delivers gaming strategies and analysis 7 days a week.
The winning edge.
It's your advantage to more winning
more often.
This is the SportsGrid Radio Network. You're listening to Football Full Circle with Joe Lisi and Ben Stevens.
Live right here on FFC, we continue our previews for Conference Championship Sunday in the NFL. And, of course, Lisi Guy, the first game up, that is in Philadelphia, 3 p.m. Eastern Time, the Eagles and the Commanders in the NFC title game. A lot of the focus early will be on the injured left knee of Jalen Hurts, a full participant in practice on Thursday. We expect him, of course, to play, but how effective is he going to be? His props, Joe, 180 and a hook through the air, 31 and a half utilizing his legs. How much do the Birds need out of Jalen Hurts to win the conference championship?
I think a lot. Again, if you're Washington, you're taking away Saquon Barkley to a degree, shutting down the run, whether you could do that or not, and forcing Jalen Hurts to throw over the top. Now, granted, he couldn't really do that with the bad weather last week, but again, how good is the knee? Can he push off? I want to see that early on to see how I adjust my defensive game plan. So if I'm looking at it from the props perspective, sure, Philly can win a lower scoring game because they have Saquon and they can run the football. But if they're going to cover the 5.5, 6, I need Jalen Hurts to get to 200. It's just the way it is, Ben. I mean, otherwise, then you're playing right into Washington's hand. So we'll see. I mean, we'll see how this plays out. I would say he's got to get to 2.25 to take the pressure off the front seven.
223.5, the number for Jaden Daniels, trying to continue a historic rookie run at the QB spot. He also has the highest rushing yards prop, that being the quarterback in Daniels at 54.5 for Washington as a team. Lisa, you expect the Commanders to keep this game close. You think Washington can win it outright. Jaden Daniels has put up historic performance after historic performance and defied expectations all season long. Does he have to go through basically every single prop come Sunday for the Commanders to win a championship outright?
Yeah, absolutely. Jaden Daniels needs to be Jaden Daniels. Maybe not 299 and another 39 yards or 40 yards on the ground, but he's got to be in the area of 2.25 and at least 50 or 60, and he's got to limit turnovers. I mean, that's the bottom line. Take what they give you. You know that they're going to take away Terry McLaurin as a first option or at least limit him. That means a lot of Zach Ertz or even Austin Eckler coming out of the backfield. So again, utilize what you have. And then once you get into the red zone, then you could go all out. But again, move that football between the 30s and take what they give you. He did a great job of that in the meeting in Washington, right? And they played a lot of man-to-man coverage and burned them for 80-plus yards. So we'll see.
The Commanders have not turned the football over in any of their 2 postseason games so far. That will be key. Terry McLaurin, highest receiving yards prop, 64.5. De'Ami Brown has been the leading receiver in both games, 89 in the opener against the Bucks, 98 last week against Detroit. Will A.J. Brown get involved? Only 3 grabs on 10 targets for just 24 yards so far. And, of course, a lot expected out of Saquon Barkley. The burden of the Birds on Sasquatch Barkley, 125.5, a number he has cleared in each of the 2 matchups against the Commanders this year. 146 in the first game, $150 with more than 100 in the opening quarter back in week 16. So that's the first game of 2 on Sunday. NFC Championship game at Lincoln Financial Field in Philadelphia. Joe, a very familiar setting for our AFC Championship game between 2 very familiar foes. It is at Arrowhead Stadium for the 6th time in the last 7 NFL seasons. The Chiefs have played in said AFC Championship game all 7 years in a row. And for the 4th time in the last 5 playoffs in the National Football League, it is a matchup between the Bills and the Chiefs. 2020 AFC Championship game, Kansas City won by 2 touchdowns. 2021 divisional round, one of the best football games that will live in NFL playoff lore for a long time. And then last year in Buffalo, Kansas City wins outright as an underdog in that divisional matchup. So the Chiefs are perfect against the Bills in the most significant times of a year in playoff games. 3-0 straight up and against the spread. And Lisa Guy, we are expecting another classic come Sunday evening. Just 26 cents. That's it. Separate these 2 sides. The Chiefs a slight favorite. 1.5 in the spread, minus 122 on the money line. Buffalo a slight underdog, plus 104, that money line number. Total 48.5. Joe, I asked you a similar question last week for the divisional round in Baltimore. Expected to be highly competitive, tight throughout, and relatively high scoring. It was. Will this game also live up to the billing in Arrowhead?
I think it will. I mean, look at all the matchups that they have faced in regards to even the regular season. Now, the regular season, you can make the argument Buffalo is dominated. They've won and won by margin convincingly, right? 9-18 in recent years. Josh Allen has run all over them in those regular season games. But you look at last year in regards to the playoffs, and they lose it by 3. Obviously, the 13-second game as well went right down to the wire, and I don't expect anything else outside of this. But when you look at the line and you say, okay, and we talked about this last week, right? Baltimore and Buffalo. You have a team in Buffalo that it was undefeated at home, hadn't lost, right? And they won by dominating fashion. What was it, 16 or 14 points per game? But it's Lamar, and it's this, and it's that. And at the end of the day, the Bills still found a way to win the game as a dog and cover. It's the same thing with Kansas City for me. I don't like them. And again, my heart says Buffalo, and I want to bet Buffalo. But too many people, number one, like Josh Allen and the Bills, and it's a pick'em game. You're never going to get the Chiefs at home pick, right? Just to win. And they should have covered last week, but they found a way to do it. I'm going to take the Chiefs. I think it's a barn burner. I think we go straight through the total 48.5. But I see both quarterbacks potentially putting up 300 yards through the air. But give me the Chiefs somehow, some way.
And both quarterbacks, of course, in this head-to-head competition will have a career-defining game or at least opportunity come Sunday. Mahomes has the pedigree and already has the resume. Can Josh Allen finally slay his playoff dragon in Kansas City come Sunday? We'll break down the quarterback matchup and the history at stake in KC Mo next.
Luck is winning the lottery. Strategy is settling your divorce before cashing in the ticket.
It's smarter to be on SportsGrid.
Get the winning edge. This is the SportsGrid Radio Network. SportsGrid TV and radio networks are the premier streaming video and audio channels dedicated to serving the sports wagering audience. Found on major smart TV platforms and streaming on SportsGrid Radio and Sirius XM Channel 159. SportsGrid's real-time data, expert commentary, and entertaining analysis transform viewers into informed sports enthusiasts. Our weekday radio lineup begins with the early line at 8 a.m. Eastern with Ben Stevens and Donnie Rightside. Donnie joins Kevin Walsh on Money Line at 11 a.m. Eastern, followed by Football Full Circle at noon Eastern. Kaplan and crew join the party at 1 p.m. Eastern. And Pharrell, Coast to Coast, keeps things rolling from 3 to 6 p.m. Eastern. Get in the mix with Kevin Walsh and Game Time Decisions at 6 p.m. Eastern. Evenings simmer with Carver and Lisi. Then boils over with Gabe Moritzi on Sports Rage Late Night at 10 p.m. Eastern. To find out where to find SportsGrid that's best for you, go to sportsgrid.com. It's smarter to be on SportsGrid.
How would you like to get high-speed internet for your home for less than $2 a day? That's right. For about $50 a month, you'll get lightning-fast internet. Are you paying less than $50 a month right now for your internet? Then call Whole Home Connect right now for blazing fast internet at $50 a month with no price increases, no hidden fees, no contracts, no upfront costs, no equipment fees. It's a great deal. And guess what? You can try it for 15 days. If you don't like it, you get your money back. But you're gonna love it, and you're gonna love the price. Internet for your home for $50 a month. That's less than $2 a day. Plus, no contracts, no upfront costs, no equipment fees, and our 15-day guarantee. Call now. 800-797-1292. 800-797-1292. 800-797-1292. That's 800-797-1292.
Think of us as your cool roommate that has this innate gift of somehow always picking winners and never bugs you about doing the dishes or paying rent. Sports gaming strategies and information 24/7.
Get the winning edge.
This is the SportsGrid Radio Network. You're listening to Football Full Circle with Joe Lisi and Ben Stevens.
Very familiar setting, very familiar foes on Sunday night in the AFC Championship game between the Chiefs and the Bills inside Arrowhead Stadium. Lisi Guy total is 48.5. An opportunity, as I said before the break, for both quarterbacks in this matchup either to add on to their career legacy, or, of course, falter in that step or bolster it in terms of that resume. A lot will be made of the quarterback comparison and the matchup between Buffalo's Josh Allen and Kansas City's Patrick Mahomes. Mahomes' passing yards prop, 249 and a hook, 230 and a half on the other side for Josh Allen. How do you believe the two QBs fare come Sunday in Kansas City?
I think both passing attacks take over. And I know Josh Allen only 127, but this is a game where if you're trying to erase the shadows and everything about Pat Mahomes, you have to stick the nail in the coffin and give it your best effort, right? That means, going all out, utilizing the tight ends, the wide receivers, the running backs, and challenging that secondary. We saw C.J. Stroud do it for basically 3.5 quarters, right? And they had limited playmakers as well, and they still were able to challenge that defense over the top. That doesn't mean you can't run it, but throw it to open up the run. So I think Allen over his total, and I wouldn't be surprised if D-Hop has a big game in regards to this matchup against that Buffalo secondary. I would take Mahomes over the total as well.
And, Joe, there is a thought, of course, for KC, right, that this is not the same Chiefs team even from 2020 or 2021 or beyond, despite 2 consecutive Lombardi trophies. Last year, they weren't playing great football, especially offensively, and yet won outright 3 times as a dog to win their 2nd consecutive Super Bowl. This year, they're not blowing anybody out. They haven't been overwhelmingly impressive. Maybe they try to hold the other side down to 14 points, but Mahomes and the Chiefs are not going to light up the scoreboard like in years past. I disagree, and the sample size does as well. Last year for Patrick Mahomes in the AFC title game in Baltimore, 241 yards and a touchdown. But in the previous 5 AFC championship games, conveniently all played inside Arrowhead, at least 275 yards in all 5 of those games, 15 touchdowns to only 2 interceptions in that span. He steps up, does Patrick Mahomes, in the most significant moments, and I expect to see the same. So like you, Joe, I do think there's a decent amount of scoring, and I believe both quarterbacks have a big day. Josh Allen had less than 150 total yards last week against the Flock. He can't do that, even with multiple rushing touchdowns, if Buffalo is going to outlast Kansas City and finally get past their playoff nemesis that is Kansas City. And, Joe, because neither team really has a number 1 wide receiver in the true essence of the term, and the passing props are 250 or fewer, there's not like crazy numbers throughout the receiving yards category. Travis Kelce, highest prop of the weekend, 67.5. Khalil Shakir, highest number for Buffalo at 55 and a hook. Which of the top targets for either quarterback gets most of your attention?
Well, I'm not going to Kelce this time. I would go to the secondary options, Marquise Brown and D-Hop in the passing attack. I think when you look at just Buffalo as a whole, they've been burned by number 1s and been burned by, wide receivers over the top. We saw a bunch of teams do it. St. Brown had, $175, $198 or something against them in the loss. We saw Puka have a huge day as well in their loss to L.A., So I expect, D-Hop and Marquise Brown to make some noise along with Xavier Worthy. I would go D-Hop, Brown, and then Worthy in that regard. Again, Worthy, to me, too, has potential drop issues. He doesn't secure the football as well. Keep an eye out for that. And for Buffalo, tight end, touchdown. Anytime touchdown, Dalton Kincaid. And I'm going to key Cooper. I'm going to take a shot. I just think that, why'd you get this guy? This is a perfect opportunity. I know Shakir has been making the noise, but in these games, you want to break tendency, utilize your playmakers. Why have him out there if you're not going to throw the football to him?
No doubt about it. And alongside Josh Allen in the backfield, James Cook has had a great season. 2nd consecutive season with at least 1,000 yards. And unlike last year, 17 rushing touchdowns this season. His price to hit pay dirt is plus 150 come Sunday. Did not score last week, but still has a nose for that pylon this year. He is Joe Lisi. I am Ben Stevens. Lisi Guy on Pro Football Today with Kevin Walsh and Donnie Rightside on Sunday, bright and early, 9 a.m. Eastern Time. Football Full Circle returns Monday at noon Eastern on Sports Grid Radio. Have a great weekend.
You found the advantage for gaming, odds, and more. But we call it the winning edge for short. This is the SportsGrid Radio Network.